You know the images. The red spandex, the pitchforks. Maybe you even grew up with the hell houses designed to scare you straight. We tend to assume that picture is 100% straight from the Bible. But what if I told you that most of our cultural view of hell isn't from the Bible at all? It's basically fan fiction, mixed from Dante's Inferno and Looney Tunes. Now, before you panic, our goal is not to tear pages out of the Bible. It's actually the opposite. We want to take the text seriously enough to clear away the cartoons, the medieval baggage, and the fear so that we can see what Jesus actually said. It's a heavy topic, but you're in the right place for it. Welcome to the Easy Approach.
Take it easy. Take it easy.
All right, everybody, welcome in to the Easy Approach. I am Nate, and as always, I'm joined by my good buddy Tony.
Yeah, and as always, I'm very grateful to be a part of this conversation that we're going to be having today, and very grateful for all of our listeners as well. Thank you for not giving up on us when we maybe are a little deceptive when we say some of these topics are super easy, right? No problem at all.
might be some tongue in cheek, just maybe.
Just a little. But Nate, we have a returning guest with us. Is that correct?
Yeah, one of the goats.
Yeah.
One of the goats of the Easy Approach guests lineup. It's Michael Slender.
Michael!
Howdy, thanks for having me back.
Oh, super happy.
I don't know
to
if we
have
can
you.
even call you a guest at this.
I know,
point,
right?
Michael. You're just you're the third guy who isn't always there, but you're always there in spirit at least. This episode is about Michael Slender.
That's right.
Yeah. If we haven't lost the entire group already, here's the topic. We decided, like Tony mentioned a minute ago, okay, we try to keep it easy, and then there's some floating quotation marks on either side of that because a lot of these questions are not easy. We decided to really lean in to the easy topic, the tongue-in-cheek nature of the easy topic, because this episode is going to be titled, or something similar to it, excuse my dirty mouth, what the hell?
What the hell?
Yeah, and if you can't figure out from the joke there, we're talking about hell. We're talking about HE double hockey sticks, the fiery lake, the eternal Inferno, the red spandex costume with the pointy pitchfork, eternal torture, that whole deal.
Yeah.
We're talking about hell, fellas.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for some transparency here, we are right in the middle of late winter-ish. What is it, January? And there's definitely a lot of hell weather occurring outside. If hell froze over, but that's a bad attempt at humor, I suppose. But
Yeah.
but at the beginning of December, there has been a very trendy topic of hell across YouTube and other social media. And I kind of felt that I brought this up to Nate, and I was like, man, I really feel like we should be a part of this conversation one way or another, at least bring what I like to think a little bit of a unique perspective, which if you've been listening to us long term, I would also like to think that you understand where our heart is. Our heart is definitely from a Christian perspective. We are Christians. We do believe in God. We do believe in Jesus. There's a lot of nuance there, though. And so our heart is not just for Christians. Our heart is for people who want to understand, for people who don't throw reason out, people who are very logical, who aren't afraid to engage in difficult conversations. And so I wanted to make sure that when we talk about this Christian topic of hell, that we did justice to those who maybe are looking at Christianity from the outside and really have a lot of accusations when it comes to this. Some of them are reasonably so, and others are emotionally so. Either way, I definitely want to give validity to that, Does that make sense, Michael? Like, just the context I wanted to frame this conversation around?
Yeah, thank you for doing that. That helps me wrap my brain around it too.
Yeah, I think it's well put. It's a podcast by Christians And it is for Christians, but not for only Christians. We really want to be tackling a really wide range of topics because I think the pursuit of truth and the pursuit of wisdom is not Jesus wasn't the first one to start doing that. I am a believer that he was the one who did it the best.
Agreed.
But I think the pursuit of wisdom, the pursuit of truth is what's the word? It definitely crosses aisles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
in
it's a
terms
human
of just what
pursuit.
it means to be human.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's what we're doing. I mean, the topic of what comes after death has been one. It's been around the block, right? It's been here for a long, long time. And the Christian concept of hell has, I mean, conservatively speaking, it's gone well beyond the church in terms of being like a present concept in the minds of humanity. Whether you're talking about like pop culture, whether you're talking about some of the greatest literary works in history, it's a big one. So here's how I wanted to start our conversation off, because whether you were raised in the church or you're a Jesus follower or not, I wanted to ask you guys, what were some of the earliest experiences you had with conceiving of hell? Or maybe even more specifically, being scared of it? Because probably a whole lot of us, if you've been in church more than a couple times, you've probably had that scared straight experience with hell, at least at some level or another. So I wanted to pick both of y'all's brains. What were like one of the earliest experiences that you remember of being afraid of this afterlife, subterranean torture zone?
Yeah, I'll be the first to admit that anytime the question goes to dive into your childhood and tell us about your memories, and my instant response is, what memories? I remember childhood. What? It's so hard sometimes for me to recall that. Whereas like my wife, on the other hand, she'll tell me a story about when she was like 4 years old. I'm like, how do you remember that? With that being said, I'll take a second to process that, and hopefully, Michael, this was enough of a landing way or runway. There you go, for you to have an answer. There we go.
Well done.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of how I have like memories from like watching Saturday morning cartoons. Honestly, that's where you get a lot of that sense of you see the silly devil wearing his red suit and he's got his pitchfork.
Yeah.
He has a forked tail.
Yeah, it's the Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Looney Tunes hell. Like Bugs Bunny's like strapped up in the red shiny spandex and he's torturing Elmer Fudd or convincing him that he needs to turn over a new leaf and stop hunting rabbits, right?
Yep. Yeah, precisely that. That's where I feel like the main idea, I guess, kind of floated into my brain. I think it wasn't until way later that any kind of real fear of hell kind of crept in, because until then I just don't think I was thinking about it, and it seemed like more of a joke type of situation because the culture had kind of gone that way. What I especially remember is, I don't know, maybe you guys have run across the generalized sermon, you don't accept Jesus and so you're going to hell, and you don't want that, and hey, also you need to tell other people about Jesus or they're going to hell, and now their blood's on your hands if you didn't do that.
Definitely.
Sinners in the hands of the angry God.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
And so that's where I think a little bit more of the fear kind of crept in, because now I was like, oh, well, I haven't been talking to a lot of people about it. So, if their blood's on my hands, does that mean that also now I'm in danger of going to hell? And then there was also, I don't know, it's more of a finer theological point of my upbringing that sort of made it so that it was hard to feel like you were ever particularly secure on whether or not you were going to go to the nice place or to the fiery, eternal burning place. And any kind of questions along those lines, I feel like my pastor or like other teachers were always sort of like, I don't know. That's up to God's plan, and we just trust that it's good. And I'm like, yeah, but what about for the people that it wasn't so good and they're going to hell? And that started to make me sweat a lot more. And then on top of that, there's that sense of like the family split sort of thing. Like, what if I go to hell, but the rest of my family goes to heaven? I never see them again, or vice versa.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was posed to me a lot, also as like a strange topic on hell.
Yeah,
and all of this was probably like in the middle of my teens.
Yeah, I can jump in on that as well. I mean, what you were describing right there, Michael, is definitely a perspective that my mother has and still does. You know, that heartbrokenness of like wanting the family to be united and wanting people to be together. And I do have the memory when I was younger of, you know, that fear that she had, not just in life, but for eternity, you know, like just the, you know, if her heart was broken over the idea that, you know, certain family members may or may not be in hell when they die. And so I as a kid, though, I actually was given it genuine thought. I wasn't just lip servicing that earlier. Uh, but as a kid, I do remember having this one train of thought where, and this was like, it was before I was like 10 years old. I was like maybe 8 or 9. And man, I just had it all figured out. Like, and looking back on this is definitely Pascal's wager that I came to as my own, honestly, as a kid. And for those who aren't familiar with this idea, it's just the concept that, like, well, why wouldn't I believe in God? Like, why wouldn't I believe in Jesus? Because if I believe in Jesus and he doesn't exist, or God doesn't exist, then what do I lose? I don't lose anything, right? But if I don't believe in Jesus and I don't believe in God and they do actually exist, what do I lose then? Oh, well, then I go to hell. Oh, shoot. You know, like, well, this is rationally, and this is me as a little kid, you know, and I think there's a little bit of rationale here to some degree, right? but I had it figured out. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna make sure that I never have to worry about hell ever. Like, I'm Pascal's wager. I'm going to believe in Jesus. I'm gonna believe in God, and it's kind of stupid of me not to, you know?
Yeah. Do you guys have you guys ever had any like experience or knowledge of hell houses?
I've heard of them. I've never experienced one myself, but I am familiar with the concept. And like Sunday school youth groups used to do this, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never heard of this.
Okay. Well, let me illuminate you. Let me fill you in
Nate's
on
childhood.
a missing part of your childhood. This is an important like rite of passage. You go into this house that a youth group, like an event they put on called a Hell House. Usually it's on like, I don't know, Halloween night or something. Instead of trick or treating, you go to a Hell House, and you progress through these rooms where there's like a narrative, and you're like, there are these, you know, maybe there are these people, these youth group people, they're acting, and they're like teenagers having fun and they're partying, and then like a car comes, like a, you know, like I guess you hear this part instead of seeing it, but they end up in a car crash and they all die, but because they were partying sinners, you move to the next room. And they're in hell, and they're like, there's like people chained to the walls, and you can hear screaming and people saying, "Please no!" And they're like all kinds of. It's all red, and there's glowing lights, and there's people dressed up as demons, and they're like, "Yeah." You're like, "Oh, this sucks." And then you progress to like the next room, and then like some of them didn't go to hell; they went to like the pearly gates, and then there's Jesus, and they're like, "Isn't it great?" And you can still almost hear the screaming from the next room over. But you're up here in heaven. You're like, man, it's so much better here. It's all white and there's clouds and there's no torturing demons around, and that's a hell house.
What? Dude, that's wild.
Yeah, man. And then by the end of it, it's like, take this gospel tract. You don't want to go there. You want to go to the white place. So like, isn't it good you didn't go trick or treating? Like, you came here. Aren't you grateful you get the opportunity to lock this, like you only get this rate once. It's like a mortgage rate that's going.
Yeah.
Like the rate's only going to get worse from here, so lock it down so you can go to heaven and not the other place. That's some of my earliest experiences with like being scared straight. My wife, when she was like in youth group, like she was always the one that'd be like screaming at the top of her lungs in the background. And I think she took a lot of like pride in being the loudest of all screamers.
That's funny.
Yeah. Tony, my version of Pascal's wager was I think I knew enough about what it meant to be a follower of Jesus to think, okay, just belief in God and belief in Jesus isn't enough to lock it in. Like there's clearly more required here. But then my the thing I came to at like 13, 14, 15, 16 was, all right, it's really boring being a Christian, but I want to go to heaven. So I'm going to do whatever I want until I'm too old to have fun anymore, which at like age 14, my conception of too old to have fun was like about as old as I am right now. That's like the end of fun in a life. And so I thought I'm gonna do whatever. I'm gonna have a great time and a great life, and then when I get too old to really enjoy myself, then I'll get serious.
Mhm.
And if I'm serious about it, and I'm dedicated, then when I die, I'm good. Like I'm over the line. Whatever the line is, I'm over it. And I just like years and years and years of thinking, am I over the line? Like if something tragic happened right now, am I just missing the cut, or am I way missing the cut, or like where am I? And I think that experience of the cut of the line, I think, in just talking to people who have like raised in a like Western evangelical background, I think that's very, very common. That little picture of you need to do like whatever it takes to get over the line before you die. And maybe it's a prayer. Maybe it's doing all the good stuff. Maybe it's just a belief that you hold, or something right at the end of life, or whatever else. But as long as you get over the line, you go to good place instead of bad place. While you're at it, going and looking at, listener out there, looking at past episodes we've done, we did a series on the end times. And the second episode of that series, we kind of did a panoramic look from the beginning of the Bible to the end of the Bible, of the Bible's picture of afterlife, of like the goal of all things. That effectively the Bible presents this idea that it's not the goal is not to leave Earth. The goal is the restoration of Earth. The goal is not run from Earth and go to heaven. The goal is heaven to come to Earth. So Jesus comes bringing the kingdom. It's like it's Earth, but it's real Earth. It's life, but it's what life should be. It's humanity, but it's like the idealized, epitomized humanity God designed humanity for. So if you're interested in like that, like big picture type stuff, I definitely encourage you to go back to that second episode of the End Times series, which I think is called "What If Heaven Isn't the Goal?" I believe that's the name of the episode.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite episodes. Not gonna lie.
Yeah,
Might be tying some of that episode into this one. Just saying.
Yep, it's definitely very peripheral, because we did talk about hell a little bit in that episode as well. For this one, I think we could kind of want to like get our finger on the pulse of like what we've all experienced with kind of the cultural depiction of hell, and even our own like progression and our own ideas of what hell's look like. And then maybe like as we get closer to the end, kind of summarizing what the popular views of hell are even today. But following up from that last question I asked, I wanted to ask both of you, like at what point in your like growing into adulthood did you start to wonder that pop culture depiction of hell that I've experienced, and maybe even the Hell House experiences like what I had? At what point did you begin to wonder, like, is that actually what's going on? Like, is that actually the Bible's picture of the afterlife, of heaven and of hell?
Yeah, for me personally, this had a lot to do with when I really started to dig in deep, and I came into a realization, gosh, many years after college, that okay, yeah, I can sit here and raise my hand that I believe in Jesus, and that I claim to be a Christian, forehead Christian, like you can see it on my forehead everywhere I go. But I really had this conviction of, but does my life reflect that? Like, does my behavior actually reflect that? Like, am I actually living my life in such a way that it's not for me ultimately, but it's for someone who's actually worthy ultimately. And so when I really started to make that journey and that realization, which in my opinion is really when I started to take the path down, being actually saved and knowing that I'm saved. Like Michael, I know you were alluding to that earlier. That was definitely an issue for me as well when I was younger. Um, and I started to have to tackle the idea of evangelism, right? Specifically, the going back a little bit to the man. Well, we don't want people to be missing out. We don't want people to end up in the wrong place. Like, so we have to evangelize. We have to make sure that we go out, because if I don't do it, then who will? You know. And don't get me wrong. There's a lot of really good intention there. And also don't get me wrong that this is not me discounting evangelism, but kind of like a lot of Christian topics that we may discuss, there's nuance here. And maybe when you hear the word evangelism, it's not. I don't agree in the same definition, you know. And so I had to really early on come to an understanding of what does true evangelism really look like. Is it me being on the streets yelling at people that, hey, you're gonna go to hell if you don't get your shit together? Is that really what the Bible's talking about? Is that really what's loving? Is that really what's intelligent and wise? And so that definitely was a journey for me early on in my intentional Christian walk, to figure out what's actually happening here. Is this something that if I don't take steps forward on behalf of my community or behalf of people who never had the influences that I had growing up, will they be going to a place? Will they will be tortured for the rest of their life? And I will share some level of responsibility, especially because now I know better. I am responsible to what I know. You know, that was a very big driving factor in trying to identify and go deeper here.
Yeah, for me, I actually started to really think about this when I got to Bible school. So I did a training program with a group called Youth with a Mission. It was an awesome time, and it was maybe the first time in my life, not maybe, it was really the first time in my life where I felt like I had started like a pretty vibrant relationship with the God of the Bible. And I decided, okay, now I need to go and do a Bible school. I need to read through this thing because even though my childhood was very Lutheran, which means that I was in Bible school all the time. Like I needed to go back through it with kind of this new understanding, new relationship, new paradigm. And also I was just having a sense of like, man, so much of my life has been directed not really towards the goal of knowing and loving God more. It was really towards the goal of how do I get to heaven?
Yeah.
How do I avoid hell? How do I get to heaven? That's the real goal. Doesn't matter if I don't particularly know or even like Jesus. The other option is so nasty that I don't care. So, yeah, I went through that Bible school and was just trying to keep track of where are all the places this is talking about hell or heaven. And I remember a moment towards the end of the school, we had finished the Bible and I was like, man, I don't think it talked much about this at all. And so I was like, I mean, it talks about it's sort of a generalized afterlife. It talks about Sheol. That doesn't seem to be hell. That just seems to be like the place where spirits go.
Yeah.
And so the same with like Hades, you get some Gehenna language in there. That didn't seem like he was talking about a burning pit for all eternity, as near as I could tell. And so that was where my brain for the first time was like, I don't know if this idea of hell that I've carried, where for some reason God has created an eternal fire pit and decided that Satan's in charge of it. Why is Satan in charge of it? Mm-hmm. And and what is that supposed to accomplish in God's creation? Why did he feel that was the way to craft all that exists is the heaven, the fire pit, and this lovely little green place called Earth. In the midst of that too, I was introduced to the idea of resurrection, which for most of my life I was like, resurrection means going to heaven when you die.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so after studying and not believing that anymore, Where resurrection is, no, God is bringing us back to life. That would probably be an entire other episode to really dig into that.
I think we got into that in the End Times episode.
Yeah.
Or End Times series.
A little bit.
Yeah. So like with that understanding of resurrection, I didn't know what to do with hell anymore. It doesn't really fit so well. Because I don't think people, like all the good guys get resurrected and then you're kind of like, well, I guess the other guys stay as spirits and sit in spirit fire. Like, you see what I'm kind of getting at there?
Yeah, I had a similar arc, Michael, with doing a Bible training program and then interning and teaching the Bible and then going to seminary and then teaching the Bible for a lot longer and making biblical study like kind of the cornerstone of my like vocation. I was like, wow, it sure doesn't talk about this afterlife stuff almost at all. Like either way, it almost doesn't talk about like a picture of the floating up as a spirit, you know, with God, or the floating as a spirit with Satan. Like there's very, very little. And then when it is mentioned, it's so vague, or it's in a parable, or it's in like Jesus is like, yeah, you're going to be thrown into the fiery Gehenna. And you're like, what is that? What is that? Is it just hell? And you're like, okay, oh no, it's a valley. Like it's actually a valley that you can go visit today. You can go to hell. You can go hang out in Gehenna if you wanna. All that to say, like my arc was less, I don't think this is a real thing, which I don't think that's what any of us are trying to say. But it was more of a, wow, I sure was presented a very well fleshed out theology of what this was and exactly how you got there, exactly what happens after you die, exactly what occurs down there. And it was used as a threat to kind of bludgeon people into obedience, the scared straight or the fire and brimstone type deal. And so for me, it was a real question of like, okay, if we didn't get these ideas, these clear, like definitive ideas from the Bible, where did they come from? And then that took me down the Dante rabbit hole, and then even like the John Milton rabbit hole. So have you guys had any experience with the Divine Comedy by Dante?
A little bit,
Yeah,
but
I was forced to read it in college.
yeah,
along
pretty
with,
much
Milton's
academic.
Paradise Lost.
There we go. Yep.
Yeah, I went down that rabbit hole, and holy cow, it sure is amazing how many things in our popular view, not just in like our pop culture view of hell, but even like the commonly accepted vision of what Satan is like and what hell is like and even what heaven is like. From Dante's The Divine Comedy, or like Dante's Inferno is the one most people recognize. That's like part 1 of 3 of the Divine Comedy. Then there's Purgatorio and there's Paradiso. And then John Milton's Paradise Lost. They both have like some very particular things that they just kind of came up with. And then the rest of the world over a period of like generations is like, oh yeah, no, that's just true. Like, yeah, that's just how it is. It's definitely how it is. The idea that, Michael, you brought up, like, wait, why is Satan ruling hell? Like, where is that in the Bible? Why would God do that? Like, that is from Paradise Lost. It's from the line in Paradise Lost where Satan, because Milton rates Satan like a kind of very charismatic anti-hero kind of character. And the line in that book is, better to rule in hell than serve in heaven. Or I don't think I'm quoting that quite exactly right. But that idea that Satan is like, screw you, I'm going down to be the ruler of hell. That's definitely not a biblical picture. Yeah. The biblical picture is that Satan is like condemned to this godless space, almost like he's a prisoner of this kind of space. And then with Dante, the different levels of hell, that's pure Dante. The whole like, what's it called? What's the Italian word? Caprisso or something, where it's like, to the degree you were a sinner is to the degree that you will be punished, or
different levels,
like given or the levels, but also like the just desserts, or what's it called when you do something and you're like, well, because you did that, we're going to punish you in exactly the same way, but then some kind of twisted reversal type thing. What's it called? Surely you know what I'm talking about. What's the dang thing called? It's like, you stole an apple? Oh, I'm going to chop your hand off because you took the apple with the hand.
I mean, eye for an eye, justification.
Shoot. I forget
what it's on the tip of my tongue, too. I'm blanking.
That's going to kill me.
We
I
might
can
need to
remember
edit this because
something. No. We keep it. I can remember what's close to the Italian word for it that Dante used, but I can't remember the English phrase. Yeah, in Dante, it's like, well, if you were a flatterer, which is a sin, then you get submerged in excrement because your words were like excrement. They were worthless, waste words. So you're going to be dunked in waste. Yeah. Oh, yes. So Michael just looked it up. Poetic justice.
Yeah.
Or the punishment matching the crime.
Meets the crime,
That's the idea right there. Yeah, that's also pure Dante.
That's funny.
And I will say it's become a little more popular. Contrapasso. That's Dante's term. I was close. Contrapasso. For anyone who cares. I don't think any of you care. Contrapasso. Punishment fits the crime. Yeah. I think it's become popular in recent years to kind of dump on Dante a little bit. Dump on Dante's Inferno specifically as being like really bad poetry. It's all poetry. I will say I was in that camp kind of like it's all fan fiction, it's all baloney. And there's some real things that you could knock about it, right? Like Dante's like, oh, by the way, this Pope is in hell because I didn't like that guy, and like this dude who is my rival, he's in hell, he's burning in there. So yeah, there's definitely some political satire like woven into Dante's work. But as you get to like Purgatorio and then later Paradiso, it's some of the most elevated poetry I've ever read. At least I can't read Italian, but I can, I read the translation. It's beautiful. And I was moved to tears multiple times at his depictions of every tear being wiped from every eye and all things being made right in the end. Which is not to say like, and therefore I agree with everything Dante said, but it is to say like you can put your finger on truth, right? Even if you miss it in a handful of other things. But all that said, that whole rabbit hole experience with Milton and with Dante was like, okay, yeah, we really took some years and years and years later extra biblical stuff and then just ran with it over the course of a couple centuries.
Yeah, so that kind of leads me to the next question that I don't know if maybe a viewer is already thinking this, listening to us. We're talking about, the traditional view. We're talking about, where a lot of that comes from, surprisingly, and maybe not the most biblical of sources, even though there are, like you said, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, which once more, if you've heard me talk about the need for moderation and not swinging from one extreme to another, you're going to hear me say that again on this podcast in many, many contexts. But the question that's on my mind now is, man, you guys are Christian, right? So are you telling me that you don't believe in hell? Is that Nate? You don't believe in hell? Like, really?
Yeah,
is
Michael.
that what you're saying?
What are you saying?
Michael?
The people want answers.
Pitchforks. They're getting the pitchforks out.
Yeah. So Tony, your question is like, okay, there's definitely some things about the popular depiction of hell that don't seem to be biblical. So where do you go with that? Because Jesus definitely talks about like the idea of evil being punished is very biblical, right? Yeah. The idea of part of the process of all things being made right is the crushing of all the things that are wrong, right? Or the transformation of all the things that are wrong. But there's both sides of that. There's both parts of that.
Yeah. As I mentioned before, trying to understand sort of like what happens when you die, but in light of the resurrection, kind of leaves you with interesting questions. The Bible does seem to paint this idea of like, okay, so you die and are perhaps held somewhere in spirit form for the day of the resurrection where you get back up again. And could it be that one of those places is a bit more pleasant than the other? I really don't know. There's also some evidence in like what Paul is talking about in his letters where it's like, they talk about it as sleep. So are you just kind of snoozing for a bit and then you wake up to a resurrection? And it's kind of weird and tricky. And then you have discussion around like some will be resurrected to glory and vindication and honor, and some resurrected to their judgment. And so we definitely believe that there's judgment coming. There's vindication coming for the righteous, and there will be a day of reckoning for evil and those who have linked their whole lives to it. But then it's just not very clear about, well, then what And so there's a lot more kind of float in, I guess, as I would put it, in terms of what we have in the scripture and what we can try to kind of like paint a picture with is not as much as I thought there was when I was much younger.
Yeah, absolutely.
I resonate with that exact sentiment a lot, where for me, if Jesus and then like the Bible as a whole gives us 99% of this thing, and then 1%, or I would even say less than 1% of a picture of this other thing, the other thing being a picture of hell and a picture of heaven and the details about the afterlife. If almost the entirety of the witness of the Bible and the words of Jesus, the instruction of Jesus, are about what we are to do in this life, and then what God's goal is to do on this earth and in our lives, then for me, it's like, all right, well, I'm clearly supposed to prioritize this, and I'm supposed to put my focus and energy into this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of have to, when I've had students in the past say, please explain to me what heaven and hell are all about.
Mm.
I give my thoughts, like how, C.S. Lewis wrote a book about heaven and hell called The Great Divorce. And it's just a big, long story. And then right at the beginning, he goes, hey, by the way, this isn't my view of heaven and hell. In case you want to attack me for it, this is just a story. I'm not a theologian. I'm just a storyteller.
Yeah.
He's definitely covering his butt. But I think for him, he knew enough about the Bible and about God to go, okay, the popular version in its exact form can't be right. So what is right then? It doesn't seem like the Bible gives us enough to form a perfectly crystal clear picture of what it's all about. So his solution was, let me write a story about what I imagine it could be like. And then at the beginning say, this is not my view of heaven and hell. I'm just writing a story.
Disclaimer.
Yeah. Go read The Great Divorce, by the way, if you haven't. It's a
Please do.
really, really amazing book, and it's a short read. But my answer to students that have asked, like, what do you think heaven and hell is actually all about, is I'll give thoughts, and especially I'll give thoughts about the greater witness of Scripture and the meta-narrative of the Bible, which I think is all about heaven coming to earth, heaven and earth uniting, and earth being healed, and less about getting out of earth and more about heaven coming here.
Mm-hmm.
Less about being saved from hell and less about getting the hell out of us, if that makes sense. Living hell-free existences. So often my answer is, I think that if we were supposed to have a really detailed view of heaven and hell, we would have been given more information.
Yeah.
And my hunch is almost that perhaps Jesus knew that we would obsess over it and then didn't give us much. And my evidence for that is the fact that we do obsess over it and we have been given almost nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, I think that's my overall thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say as I continue to develop in my ideas of what it is about, I want to share like a really, really like super fast version of. I'm actually very in between. Like, do we record like another episode, or we do like a 20-minute blurb about Gehenna, or a whole other episode about Gehenna, like specifically, because that is the dominant metaphor.
We definitely could turn this into another episode. There's
Maybe
enough content here, to be honest.
Okay. You know what? I'm making the call here, where I think we need to do a different episode, a follow up here on Gehenna and the other words for hell that are translated hell in the Bible, because there are 4. Gehenna is the dominant one, and it's a very loaded term in terms of the entirety of the biblical story. So I'm going to make the executive call and say, let's do the follow-up episode on the words for hell.
Yeah, the bringing up and talking more about where we see Gehenna will be really helpful. I think talking about the lake of fire in Revelation will be helpful too. I think that's where, just that further fiery imagery is, that's just another place that I think people go to when they're trying to conceptualize what is hell, what does it look like. So going to that, like those verses, I think will be helpful. I don't know if there's enough time in this episode, but Something that was really helpful for me in sort of like as I started to process this, once I got it in my brain, like, I don't know if the popular look to this, the cartoon look is quite right. Seeing that in like Christian history, especially early Christian history, there are different views about what sort of happens once you die.
Yeah, and I think I'll be honest with you, that is going to have to move to the next episode as well, because that's a huge conversation, and I think it's a really important part of this. So, yeah, you know what? For everyone listening, I think hop into the next episode if you want to continue this conversation. It's a big one, and it deserves a little more time, I think.
Yeah, and Nate, I just want to say, like, I am very grateful that we have decided that we're going to do another episode on this, because there's so much more here. But I know we need to land this ship. So where do you think we need to do?
Yes, there's so much more to this conversation I want to get into, but we are, as we've talked about a minute ago, we're going to have at least one follow-up episode. We've got to talk about those words and concepts of hell that are found in the Bible. And then also, I even wanted to touch a little bit more on C.S. Lewis's articulation of what hell is like. He's got some very poignant terms and quotes and one-liners and books. Even Narnia has his little vision of hell right there in the last battle, the seventh one. So, you know, if you want to avoid Narnia spoilers, don't show up for the next one. But definitely do. It's gonna be good, a really good one, I think. In landing the plane here, if you guys want to, do you guys have like, would you be able to give me, each of you, a one-line takeaway from our conversation so far?
Yeah, so I think for this particular episode, and not the conversation as a whole, that with what we're going to go talk about next, I want the listener to really understand that, hey, there is a traditional understanding of hell. There is this fire and brimstone. There is this like constant demon poking you in the side, and Satan just laughing at you constantly for all of eternity. And really just challenge yourself. Is it biblical? And now we're going to push deeper in our next episode. Now we're going to look a little more into the weeds and not high level. We want to engage. We want to dig deep. We never want to fall into the trap, like Nate said, of just staying surface level, because we already know, and we know they're wrong and we're right. We don't want to fall into that. We don't think Jesus did. And as Christians, we do think that Jesus had a very intelligent way of handling these things.
Yeah, I don't know. A one-liner is a tough task.
Well, Tony cheated. That wasn't a one-liner. It was a one-paragrapher.
I totally missed the one-line part of that question. My bad.
I mean, I think with our conversation, for a one-liner, it's just be curious. I think there's so much to learn, and so often so much can be like found just in the nuances of like these different positions, but also just getting into the biblical text and just kind of, again, seeing what's there, challenging your own presuppositions to try to understand what it seems like the author was trying to say, and not just assuming it means a dude in a red suit with a pitchfork because that's what you've always thought. But I say what I say because I think in my life, just the more I've tried to cultivate being curious, the more, I don't know, nuances I've discovered, the more understanding and I've gained for my fellow human beings who are wrestling with these kinds of questions, and they're not wrestling for no reason. And I want people to be able to wrestle with these ideas because they're trying to wrestle with God, and I want that to be an experience that can be perhaps painful in the moment, but lead to them being closer than ever to Jesus, rather than just sort of limping away from Jesus afterwards.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well put, guys. And just as a clarification, if you're listening out there going like, oh my gosh, they're preparing me for some real heresy in the next episode, where I wasn't, at least. I don't know if Tony's got some weird stuff planned. He's laughing
Totally.
maniacally in the background.
How did they know?
Yeah. I think if anything, my view of what happens after life has been shored up by what Jesus cares about and talks about the most, and less by what he talks about less. And so I'm very confident of what I should be doing as a follower of Jesus. And I mentioned this earlier. I'm very confident about what God's vision for the restoration of all things looks like, and how I should be partnering with him. And so if you say, well, does that mean you're going to heaven or hell when you die? For me, it's like, man, I don't know. I don't know what happens the moment I die. I'm not really sure. I have some vague ideas. I loved C.S. Lewis's book. That would be cool. But I am really, really confident about what I should be doing now. And what I want to see is I think
right.
what Jesus wanted to see and wants to see, which is an earth, like starting with my life, but then as I partner with Jesus in seeing that go outward, going further and further outward. What I want to see, and what I think Jesus wants to see, is a world where all of the things that make up hell aren't present anymore. The things that make up
Yes.
hell aren't present in my heart and in my mind and in my habits, in the way I treat people, and to see that balloon outward into my family, that all the things that make up hell are no longer present in my family at all. That we only have God-breathed, God-saturated relationship with each other. And then to see that balloon further and further outward. And I think, speaking as a Jesus follower, and, this could very much be alienating for people who aren't, but at least you know what I think, right? I think that's where all of history is heading, to the point where every tear is wiped from every eye, and all the things that make up all of the most painful suffering on earth, hell, as it were, is just no longer there. And that all of us walk step by step in the wisdom and the love and the goodness of God. And that's, how it is to love him and enjoy each other forever as he intended. So all three of us went with a paragraph, but this is a very dense conversation. And the last thing I want to do is trample someone's sensitivity with my curiosity, right?
Yes. Yes.
I think there are many who are curious, and I champion that. And there are many who may hear this and say, "Oh, buddy, I can't listen to you ever again." And I hope that there can be a disclaimer that avoids that end, right? Where the goal behind this podcast was to say there are a lot of people who struggle with this idea. So how can we engage with that rather than completely just shutting down and saying there's no place for you to question and to wrestle? I think the narrative of the Bible and God's narrative with people is people wrestling, and God inviting people into a wrestling match of sorts, where there are questions and there are struggles and there's a further up and further in to our understanding of God's vision of the world. So all that said, without waxing eloquent, I think we can say there are some things that are unclear, but there's a lot of things that are very clear. And so if I don't know what's going on over there, at least I do know what Jesus is all about, and I can really double down on that. That would be that'd be my final word for it. Yeah. Well, you know what? As always, you guys, that was a really enjoyable conversation for me. I'm very much looking forward to the next one and getting into some nitty gritty about what the Bible actually says and what his vision actually was of the afterlife and punishment and all the above. But in the meantime, Tony, as always, thank you. And Michael, once again, as always, a pleasure to have you, buddy.
Thanks for having me again.
So, as always, y'all, with all the questions and the wrestling, I encourage you to remember to take it easy.
Take it easy.